Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and welcome to Protest and Promise. We began this show in the wake of all of the civil unrest because of the death of George Floyd. But we also wanted to see what would happen in the future and the opportunities for young Angelenos to address leaders in the community. Well, today, perhaps we can consider this a promise fulfilled. I am so delighted to be joined by not just an incredible woman, but I think almost a superhero. We're delighted to have Deputy Chief Emada Tingirides with us, and she has just been given the responsibility to lead the Community Safety Partnership expansion. So nice to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Literally, so much of your career has been in community service, but you almost didn't even have a choice given the background of your family, your grandparents, probation officer and teacher, your mom, nurse practitioner. I would imagine that community service was part of your makeup from the very beginning.
Absolutely part of my makeup from the very beginning. Just watching my mother, grow and become a nurse and give back and work in the most hardest areas of Los Angeles at the emergency room at County USC Hospital really humbled me as a young child. And then watching my grandmother, after being a corrections officer, going and teaching for 35 years. So it was only natural that I would follow in their footsteps and want to serve the community that I grew up in.
Well, being a police officer, especially in this moment in time, definitely has its challenges. And we have this wonderful panel of young Angelenos that I'm sure have a lot of questions for you, in particular in this new role that you have in leading this wonderful community safety partnership expansion, because the program has actually been in place since 2011. So let's say hello to our wonderful, wonderful youth. We have Allison, we have Evan, we have Sashin, and we have Joel.
Hi guys, nice to meet you. So the Community Safety Partnership Program is a program that started in 2011, and it started with officers working in some of the city's public housing developments in East Los Angeles and in the community of Watts. The primary mission of the officers working in that program was to walk footbeats, build relationships with the communities that they were serving, implement and be creative and work with the youth and create youth programs. And ultimately, when the officers started building those relationships and working with the youth and creating youth programs, what we saw was this trust and this relationship built. And we also saw a decline in crime in the community. So people in those communities started to feel safe. They started to feel like the officers were part of their families. And then we began working with each other to fix some of the concerns and address some of the issues in the community.
Over the last 9 years, correct, since it was formed in 2011, what has the police force done to aid the community in basically giving them a sense of reassurance that hey, I got your back, don't worry, stuff like this, especially because as you see right now, we're in such hot turmoil, I guess you could say. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you this.
That's a great question, and you're so right. It's so critical right now in this time and moment and what's going on across the country. And I think what all of the officers did when they started the program was make a commitment to stay in that community and get to know the people in that community for 5 years. So one of the successes, and the most important success, was the officers allowing the community to tell us how to work and police in the community. So one of the things that we did to show that we had the community's back was listen. And not only listen, but understand. And then once we listened and we understood, we began working on things that affected both us as police officers and things that affected the community. What was really key and compelling to me about this was the officers began to look at the community differently. They began to humanize and relate to the community no different than they would with their own family or their children, and they felt like they are part of the community.
Are those officers that committed to those 5 years, were they literally beat cops that were going to be there doing literal police work as well as community service work, or were there two separate groups that were assigned to the area, one to be community liaisons and one to be law enforcement?
The officers that actually joined the program, they interviewed. So they had to sit in an interview and talk about why they wanted to join CSP. A lot of them came from the community. A lot of them had grew up in single family homes. A lot of them expressed the desire to want to give back and serve their community. So they were patrol cops. They were beat cops. When they came over to the CSP program, the expectation was for them to be a beat cop and a community cop.
So together.
Yes.
Interesting. So if you wanted to tell a police officer in your community things that they should consider when being a part of the community or even being law enforcement in a community, what are some of the things that you're not seeing in your communities that need to be shared? Because you have this opportunity to talk to Chief T, because she's going to expand the program. It's not just going to be, the areas, it's going to be hopefully larger. So Evan, what would you want Chief T to share with her group about what is needed in the realm you live in?
I've been learning a lot about mental health, and there have been some, really saddening incidents that have happened recently with citizens that had mental health issues and police officers not handled that the right way. And I would love to see more education for officers about mental health and how to help every member of our community.
That is a great response and a huge concern. I couldn't agree with you more. The LAPD has mental health intervention training that all of the patrol officers go through, and some of your same concerns consist of that programming. The officers learn about signs and symptoms of people experiencing a mental health crisis. We also have a team that goes out with the police officer, that's a doctor, a clinician, that responds and helps the officers assess that person that they're going to be serving. It is so important that we recognize that this does happen in the community, and training is our biggest tool to addressing that type of concern.
Joel, I'm wondering, have you had any interaction? I mean, you're young, and I don't want to imply anything, but have you had interaction with any police officers for any reason? Or if not, what are your perceptions of law enforcement at large?
It's all been positive. The police here in my local area does a great job of keeping our streets safe, of keeping our streets clear, of always making sure that everything is in order. But I guess my general question would be, like you mentioned, Chief T, that training is extremely important, correct? So with the calls by many people to defund the police, how does that affect your training capabilities, as law enforcement as a whole? I mean, I would think from my understanding that more training, better preparation would require even more funding, not less.
You're correct. Training is key and crucial to the work that police officers do. I can remember in 1995 when I became a recruit and I was starting the academy. I didn't know much I've never been in a fight before. I didn't know much about guns. I'd never touched a gun. There was so much that I needed to learn, and that training made me better equipped to go out and serve the public. One of the most important things that I received in that training was understanding the community, how to respond to domestic violence incidents. We actually learned how to speak Spanish so that we can communicate with the vast different cultures within our city. And so everything we do should be centered around training. One of our core values is quality through continuous improvement. You have to constantly assess and train and improve in an organization. I understand the calls behind the defunding because people want to see money go into key things like mental illness. If those systems become whole, then they're better able to help us and work alongside us to address these issues and concerns in society.
You know, what about the issues of different communities? You said you learned Spanish. What about the sensitivity to different issues? Is that something that you are concerned with, Allison? Because given the fact that you want to get a minor in Chicano studies led me to think that obviously that is something that's important to you.
So I'm wondering, with the LAPD Community Safety Partnership Bureau, are there ways for police officers to help incorporate undocumented people in the community without them feeling threatened that they're going to get deported at any moment?
Thank you for that question, Allison. We now have a police force that represents the community that we serve. We're well over 50% Latino, which is huge as it relates to the city of Los Angeles. Right now, our officers that work in the community safety partnership sites do a lot of engagement with our Latino community. A lot of the officers assigned to the program speak Spanish and grew up in the community. We've developed ways to build that trust and communicate with these families so that they feel safe. And one of the core components of CSP is understanding the culture and the history of the community that we're working in. And we let the community teach us that so that we can become more aware and we understand what matters to them, what their fears are, and that we can make a difference and create leadership in everyone in our community.
I remember reading that you said when you first started working with this program that those community meetings were not warm and cozy. I mean, you guys were handed it. And so what do you think made the difference, and what were you hearing, and how tough was it?
It was difficult in the beginning. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into because I don't think I really understood the pain and the hurt that people had. So to be able to be still and listen to that pain and listen to those concerns and not really have a response as it relates to you're wrong, I'm right, but really empathize with that person is what really helped me to really understand the community. And once I listened and I heard, I found myself apologizing to some of the community and not necessarily apologizing for something that I did, but apologizing for that feeling that they had and that mistrust that they had for law enforcement. And once we were able to have that breakthrough and have those conversations, we began to make change and we began to realize that we all want the same thing, and that's safety for our community.
So Evan, what are your thoughts?
Well, the question I'd like to ask you is, I think that a lot of people here would acknowledge that there is a problem. We've seen unequal numbers of citizens, of innocent people getting shot and injured and killed. And personally, I've witnessed events with my own father where in situations where neither person may be at fault, but it's clear that the officer is scared, the officer is intimidated because of societal concepts and assumptions that are false. And the officer is the one that is armed in that situation, and everybody in the situation is scared, and there are a lot of bad outcomes that could be possible. Sorry, that was a long way of getting to my question, but my question is that a lot of people stand on different views of this issue, where whether there are bad cops within a good system or whether there are flaws within the system itself, whether there are institutional changes that could be made. And I'm just wondering where you stand with that.
I think it's both. And when you're talking about serving a community, you have to be balanced. And police work, you have to be flexible. One minute I could be talking to an individual, and the next minute a shooting call comes out. And then I can handle that shooting call, and the next minute a robbery call comes out. And so you're constantly being flexible, and you never know what your day is going to be like. And you're responding to the calls from 911 or the community calling in asking for help. And I think a lot of people don't realize that we don't just drive through the city looking for something to do. We're responding to calls for service. And that includes even with our traffic enforcement. If someone's speeding, if we experience someone get killed in a traffic accident, you're going to have an increased amount of police officers in that area so that we can prevent the traffic collisions because someone's running a stoplight or a stop sign. And so I think it's a great system as it relates to people wanting to serve and people deciding to do this career because they have a heart. And not everybody wakes up and says, I want to put my life on the line for someone that I don't know. And so I think we have a system that needs to constantly be assessed, and training is so key and crucial in that. And then we hire from the human race. It was mentioned, you have bad doctors, you have bad lawyers, you have bad teachers, and you have some police officers that don't deserve to wear a badge. And so how do we identify that? What systems do we have in place to identify those individuals that probably shouldn't be a police officer? And part of that goes back to the leadership, knowing your people. We have body-worn cameras now where we can do audits and we can watch the officers' actions and watch the body-worn video footage. We've put things in place where we can monitor our officers, and if we see a pattern that they're going in, we can call that officer and identify, does he need training? Is he having a bad day? Does he need to take a few days off? It is a stressful job, and the officer has to ensure that he is well within himself before he can even serve a community and make them well.
You know, and you talk about being a part of the community and obviously the integration with the young people in the community. How many of you, because one of the parts of this program is football coaches, you're football coaches and you're Girl Scout leaders. And so how many of you you're too old now, well maybe not, but would have loved having a police officer as your football coach or your scout leader? So the whole idea of getting to know someone early on and understanding where they're coming from, you know, because Joel said that he's had good, not any kind of negative interaction. Evan, I'm going to call you out just one more time only because I'm really curious about what you alluded to. Based on the interaction that you've had with police officers and witnessed, are you trusting or not trusting when it comes to needing to call them for help?
It depends on if I'm in a situation where a police officer is truly needed. I think as a society, we sometimes just automatically defer to police when a lot of times there are situations where there are other professionals that could be used. You know, my mother is a psychologist. She works for the county. We could call a hotline like theirs, and social workers could come and handle a situation where their, training is key, and social workers, that is all of their training. Whereas cops have many responsibilities, and that's not their primary responsibility. I actually do have two quick questions for you, officer. The first is there any sort of quota or something that would have the same effect as a quota? The second is there any priority placed on having officers serve in their communities where they come from?
Oh, interesting.
Interesting question. It's a great question. First, as it relates to quotas, we don't have quotas. We don't put a quota on productivity or how many tickets an officer writes. What we do put an emphasis on is community contacts, making sure that we're getting out there and we're getting to know people in the community and that we're being responsive to that. But we don't have quotas. Second, it is so important that we identify people within the community that have an interest in law enforcement and criminal justice that would like to come back and serve the community. I grew up in South Los Angeles. I come from Watts. I made the decision to come back and serve my community. Our LAPD's recruitment department has worked really hard to ensure that we do recruitment fairs in the community, in the city of Los Angeles. We go to the local colleges, we go to high schools, we are on 105.9 radio. We try to find social media and ways to really talk about what policing is and encourage people from the community to sign up and become an officer and come back and serve in their community.
Very cool. We don't have an enormous amount of time, but I want to have everybody at least have an opportunity to, say something to Chief T and something that she can carry with her when she goes back in expanding upon this program. And I do want to ask you one last question before we go. So, Allison, what do you want Chief T to take with her today from your wonderful mind?
Well, I would like Chief T to take away, basically, to think about all of the people in her community, because sometimes there are people in the community, even if they don't have a home or they do have a home, that are disregarded sometimes. So hopefully you could take away from that, and maybe we could see more improvements in Los Angeles in the future.
Thanks. Evan?
I'd like to say thank you for coming out here and speaking to us. I think the work you do with community building is extremely important. And also thank you for, putting the work in and rising in the ranks and breaking a glass ceiling.
Thank you, Evan. I also want to say to you, I heard what you said, and you mentioned your father and seeing some interactions. And it's so important that you talk about that. And it's important that we hear concerns like that. And I think oftentimes there's perceptions or there's feelings and an incident happens and there's no closure to it. As you mentioned, your mom's a psychologist, so I'm sure you've heard a lot about closure and understanding. So please keep sharing your story. I hear you. That is why we work hard, because we want to develop this relationship and understanding and have better interactions with the community. And I really appreciate you being open and honest and bringing that awareness.
Very cool. Joel, what would you like Chief T to hear from you and take back with her when she starts to expand upon this great program?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, thank you for all that you're doing. I'm a personal big supporter of law enforcement, and for me, it hurts to see the climate that we're in, because many times, from our perspective, we see what's on the other side of the camera, but we don't sometimes understand what you guys are going through, right? What the officer is going through, or what the situation calls for. But I know I don't have a lot of time, but I would like to ask a really important question, because I think it's really important in the climate that we're in. So a lot of people in our generation, in Gen Z, maybe about half, I don't know exactly how many, but a lot of people my age believe, that the police force needs to be abolished, that it is built on a system of racism, of oppression, that everything's corrupt, that we have to start over, that it's done, and that there is no good police officer out there. Now, for you, what would you say to a person who has that belief as an officer? What is your message to them, and how your perspective could maybe change their opinion on that subject?
My message and my response would first be to listen and try to understand where that's coming from. And then my second response is it has to be a partnership. Police are still needed. I don't think there'll ever be a time when there's a society where a police officer isn't needed. I discussed earlier about understanding the reallocation of funds to put into other programs and other agencies to address homelessness, to address mental health. We need help. Right now, the LAPD is the only 24-hour, 7-day-a-week entity that will respond to a dog barking, a neighbor dispute, a robbery, a shooting, a mentally ill person, and all of that lies on our shoulders. I do believe that there could be some systems put in place to assist us that we can work alongside to address those issues and those concerns and have a response that may reduce our interactions and the possibility of us becoming involved in an officer-involved shooting. So what I would say to those individuals is, let's sit down together. Let's understand the role of a police officer, the role of our justice system, the role of our county probation, the role of our mental health system, and how can we all collectively serve our community, because all of those individuals serve the community, the schools, their job is to serve the community. How can we collectively come up with a plan and a response to our community? And I'd also like to say that I'm a mother. I have 6 children, and I've been on the LAPD for almost 26 years. And I love my job. I love the communities that we serve. And I don't know an officer that doesn't. So I would also ask someone to give us a chance, humanize us, and we in turn humanize you. And collectively, we can work together to make this a better society.
Very well said. Sasheen, make it quick.
I have no question for you to take back to the community. I think you guys are doing a great job. I just hope the communities that you guys are going to actually cooperate with you guys, because then it's on them to either cooperate or not, because you guys are obviously going out there and helping them out. But again, there's many people that are behind law enforcement and support you guys. Just keep doing a phenomenal job. And hopefully you get all the necessities you need to keep carrying this job with safety. Safety is number one. But thank you, Chief T, and hopefully we get to have another conversation soon.
Sasheen, you said something really important. You said, I hope that the community works with you and they cooperate. And that has to be mutual. We have to cooperate with each other, right? But
Right.
Something that we didn't talk about today is cooperation. I have a son, he's Black, he's 20 years old, and I've had to have the conversation with him on how to respond and react if you get pulled over by a police officer. And what I tell my son is, first and foremost, cooperate. Do what
Right.
the officer asked you to do, and be respectful. Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Part of the conflict comes when individuals don't cooperate or they don't comply. Then it creates this conflict, and then there's a response to this conflict. But again, some people don't cooperate due to fear and then feeling like the police officer is going to harm them. And then the officer takes that uncooperation like that person wants to harm me. So part of all of this starts with being respectful to each other, cooperating with one another, and complying when an officer does have an investigation or needs to make contact with an individual.
Right. Yeah, there needs to be a mutual cooperation effort from both sides.
Yeah. And Chief T, that was wonderful. And obviously you need to have the last word. You're expanding this program. You've watched it be successful in the communities that you've worked in. So if you were going to offer these young people hope for the future and a dream as to what Los Angeles and the police department and a community would look like, what do you want to see?
I want to see individuals such as these folks that I've had time to spend with today come back and work in their communities and help address some of the concerns that are causing the conflict in some of our communities. I hope that people through all of this can sit down at the table and have discussions and hear one another and come up with solutions. You know, Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, and all of us have dreams, and we shouldn't minimize one person's dream over the other. Collectively, our dream is for us to be free in a society and not live in fear, and to be respected and to make a difference in our communities. And that's what my hope and my dream is.
And that's a wrap on this Protest and Promise.